Hey everyone, welcome back to the Roto Grinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's July 21st. We have 7 baseball games tonight. I'm going to kind of skip over the 2 early games. There's not any action that I'm seeing pretty much anywhere, so we're going to kind of skip over those. We're really going to focus on these 7 games, and with it being only 7 games, I was able to have my friend Dean come on here, and we'll be able to rant and ramble a little bit.
Yeah, I'm your 7-game guy. When it's a 15-game slate, you probably don't want me on here because I'll probably go over like an hour and a half with my nonsense and my rambling and just kind of my little sidetracks. But this is my wheelhouse. 7 games, I'm good to go.
7 games. We've looked at the slate. We've done our research. You think this is a cash game slate or is this a tournament slate?
No, I don't think it's a cash game slate at all because the first thing I want for my cash game is a pitcher I can trust. And I don't know if we have that. There's some pitching options we'll go over, and you just can't, not click somebody. So you have to roster somebody in that pitcher spot. But, look, Steven Strasburg is pitching at noon. He's not available at night. So if he was pitching at night, yeah, sure, cash game slate. But it's going to be really, really dicey. We'll get through it. There's a couple names I think are interesting, but some of the prices kind of throw me off as well. So, yeah, and, the sponsor, of course, on Fantasy Draft, you have to roster 2 pitchers. Do you trust 2 pitchers tonight? I don't. On a site like FanDuel, even one is sphincter clenching enough, but here we are.
Yeah, you mentioned Fantasy Draft. If you guys enjoy the podcast Monday through Friday, head on over to our sponsor site, Fantasy Draft. Use promo code Grinders. That way, you guys get 100% deposit bonus up to $600, and on top of that, you get incentives here at Roto Grinders for free for a year for Fantasy Draft. So that's $180 value just for using the promo code Grinders. So check that out. Lot to get to here because we don't have a lot of pitching, so it always makes it a little bit harder to break down the slates because you want to talk about so many bats. So we'll start here with Milwaukee at Pittsburgh. Laureano against Matt Garza. Oh man, what a game here!
Yeah, oh boy. Here we go. First guy we don't really want to trust, but I suppose maybe he's kind of sort of interesting to some extent. Francisco Laureano. The price is not too restrictive. 7.9K on FanDuel. The price is fine. He's just not been good, and it's been a while since we've seen him actually be good. We know there's some K upside against Milwaukee. We know the ballpark is really positive for pitching, but you're begging. You're begging for 6 innings out of Laureano, right? And you're begging he doesn't walk 9 guys. I suppose he's interesting for tournaments because we know he's shown that upside before. Just don't swing. He'll walk you. He wants to walk you. If you swing, you're going to strike out, but that's kind of how it works out. And that's kind of the tricky part because, how do you take advantage of Laureano on the other side if he's not on? Well, he's just going to walk a bunch of guys, and, walks are fine. You get your 3 points or whatever it is, depending on your site. But it's not exactly the way to take down tournaments, I suppose. On the other side, you got Matt Garza, who's just terrible. He's not good. And then we have McCutchen at a very, very fair price, 3.3K. It's a super cheap. I know he was scuffling pretty much the entire year. The injuries have been speculated, but who knows? Kind of broke out of it to some extent, right, going into the All-Star break. But still, I'm still a little bit hesitant. But a 3.3K versus a broken Matt Garza, I'm perfectly fine with that click. Don't mind Starling Marte either. Polanco is 4K. That's kind of a reach for tournament. Sure, I suppose if you're stacking Pittsburgh, sure, why not? But it's not. I'm not very enthusiastic about this game, and I feel like that's what I'm going to say for a lot of these games. So that's kind of where I'm at. How about yourself?
Well, when we're looking at Laureano, I feel like everybody thinks the Brewers are just so much better against left-handed pitching, and really, they're in the bottom 10 in WRC plus, and they're striking out 23.5% of the time against lefties. So there's some upside there, and on this slate, you're going to have to take 1 or 2 pitchers. We'll talk about a guy that I actually do have a lot of interest in here in a few minutes, but I think that Laureano is definitely in play for tournaments, and that's kind of where we're at here on the slate is tournaments. So I think he's in play in tournaments. Talking about bats, you kind of touched on the guys that I like here, Marte, McCutchen. I think Kong, he was a guy that I targeted yesterday on Wednesday night, and I think you can go back to the well on him here. And if Joyce cracks the lineup, I feel like this is a good spot for him as well. We want those lefties. We want lefties or righties here against Garza.
Yeah, Joyce on FanDuel is a 2K cheapie. I suppose he might crack the lineup. Of course, there's always a chance, that he gets the hook once a lefty hits the ball game if that happens. But, all it takes is one swing to justify that roster spot. And I think Joyce is if he does crack the lineup, it's basically for tournament only, or, you're only rostering him if you like everything around him. It just kind of makes everything else work. You mentioned Gung. Yeah, I suppose. It's got a little bit pricey for Gung. He's, 3.7 on FanDuel. I just think there's better values, better spots as far as third baseman. It's not that deep, but there's somebody else I like that's much cheaper and a better ballpark as well, which we'll get to. But that's pretty much it for me. Garza, there's a lot of bad pitchers. Is he the worst of the slate? Is he bottom 3? Where do you have him as ranked as far as, I guess, there's a Coors game, spoiler alert. But he's pretty bad, Garza.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of put him behind the Coors guys. Pelfrey's on the slate, Cashner's on the slate, Tyler Duffy's on the slate. There's some bad pitchers on the slate, but Garza's definitely up there as far as bad pitchers go. Now, do you have any interest in any of the Brewers bats here against Laureano?
Look, Braun historically hits lefties really well. Lucroy historically hits lefties really well. But like I said, Laureano's not a guy that just gets pummeled. He just walks a bunch of guys. So maybe he'll give up the 3-run homer, but a lot of times he just walks 3, 4, 5 guys, and then a couple little BABIPs here, a BABIP there, and then he's giving up 4 runs. So he's not somebody that's just going to give up a ton of fantasy points. So even though he might get the hook early and things like that, and they can get to the pen, I suppose that's possible. But they're relegated for ambitious tournaments for me. 4.3K for Braun. That's not the greatest price. I suppose he's interesting for tournaments, but not somebody I'm thrilled about. As far as Lucroy, 4K, really? We could pay 4K for Lucroy? Again, if you want to do the old game theory deal and say, well, nobody's going to roster him because he's 4K, he's going to be 10% owned, whatever it may be, probably less because what is a 7-game slate? But I suppose you can do that argument, but you're more the tournament guy, the tournament mind. Is he somebody that kind of does anything for you? But for me, it's just I'm not too interested. Just kind of Laureano, if he gets beat up, it's not going to be too bad. Most likely, it's probably going to be because of walks.
Catcher's so weak on this slate, but when we look at it, there's better options that are going to be cheaper. So I'm not really a fan of Lucroy. The only place that I would play him on this slate is fantasy draft because nobody plays a catcher. We talk about it all the time. Nobody plays a catcher on fantasy draft, and it can help you win a tournament. Moving on, Miami at Philadelphia. Your Marlins, Jared Eichhoff, Tom Kohler. I've used Kohler a couple times this year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But he's a guy when we're looking at it overall, you're wanting value. So a guy that's 10-5 on fantasy draft, he's really cheap on DraftKings as well. If he gets you those double-digit fantasy points, you're happy, right? And he's done that twice against Philadelphia already this season.
I am not enthused at the prospect of rostering Tommy Kohler. He's also getting the massive negative ballpark shift, getting out of Miami into Philadelphia, much better hitter's ballpark. I'm with you as far as Philly being an opponent you want to pick on. That offense is not very good. This is kind of the game I was hinting at, by the way, is the third baseman that I like that's just too cheap. He failed me last night. Maikel Franco, I kind of called the dog and it did not work out. But I'm going back to the well. I think that's the chalk right there. He's 2.9. That's just too cheap going up against Kohler. Kohler doesn't give up a ton of home runs, but again, he's protected by that home ballpark, and I think the negative ballpark shift's going to get to him to some degree. I just can't. I can't see myself. What is he on draft? I mean, maybe it's an SP2. I can't imagine. I know the pitching is bad, but how much is he there?
He's 10-5. He's super cheap. He's really cheap on DraftKings too. I think he's in the $5,000 price range on DraftKings. Double-digit fantasy points and allowing me to just load up on Coors, maybe with a guy that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Well, there's a couple that. Well, I guess we'll get to the guys that we're sort of interested in. Eichhoff 8.1 on FanDuel. He's kind of a tweener. The Marlins, they're right now, if the season ended, at least before the games ended on Wednesday night, they're in position. They have the wild card locked down right now, or at least they're tied for it. Somehow, with a broken Giancarlo Stanton for 6 weeks, with Don Mattingly as their manager, with their all-star second baseman out for the entire year, with no fourth or fifth pitcher. One of those pitchers, by the way, being Tommy Kohler. I don't know how the Marlins are actually in contention, but they are defying all odds. And there for a while there, Kohler was a guy that kind of would go out there and kind of sort of take a punch or two, but wouldn't completely get beat up, and he wouldn't totally wreck your lineup, especially as an SP2 like you're suggesting. But I'm not feeling it. I know Philly stinks, but I don't think I'm going there.
All right. I'm trying to make a case for just getting to double digits here against Philadelphia.
You mean like
Anyway,
10.0? Like, is that...
hey, 10.0, that's giving me 2x and loading my bats up. All right, so Jared Eichhoff. I have interest in Jared Eichhoff if we see a really right-handed heavy lineup for the Marlins where we only see like maybe Yelich and Dietrich in the lineup and we see maybe 6 or 7 right-handed bats here. I feel like that's the spot that we would want to target Eichhoff.
I'll tell you what, I was watching the Marlins game, and I'm kind of curious what their lineup is going to be on Thursday night because Mattingly he rested Echeverria on Wednesday, and he basically talked about they play a Thursday night game, and then they travel and they play a Friday night game. So it's usually you don't have that. There's kind of like a day game, and you travel at night, and you arrive, whatever. So they're going to arrive late Friday morning, whatever it may be, to play Friday night. And he suggested that some of the regulars might get rested, if not Thursday, Friday. So I think there's a pretty strong chance a guy like Ichiro is going to pop in the lineup. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if an Ozuna or even a Stanton gets a day off.
Give Yelich the day off. That would be excellent, right? Like then we really have interest in Eichhoff. And the reason I'm saying this, like Eichhoff, he struggles against lefties, but the type of pitches that he throws, he's really good against righties. 25% strikeout rate, doesn't give up a lot of home runs to righties. The WOBA was down. Like he's really solid against right-handed bats. So if they go right-handed heavy, I definitely have interest.
Yeah, I mean, relative to the slate, he's one of the better options. He just is because by default, if you're going to rank him, he's certainly in the conversation of guys you're looking at.
All right, let's talk bats here. You mentioned Franco. Is there anything else that you like here for the Phillies?
That's basically it. Rupp at 3.2K. I'm not terribly enthused. I know it's kind of weird to say I'm not really on Kohler, but like, who are you going to consider? Odubel Herrera at 3.9K. I mean, that to me, that's an extreme, tournament play. Of course, he can make things happen. He'll probably lead off, but that price does not make any sense. Especially when in the same game we're seeing Giancarlo Stanton at 3.3. I know you talked about Eichhoff. You talked about how he's pretty solid against righties, but Stanton is Stanton, and his upside is pretty legit. Who's Yelich is 3.5. Just kind of note, it's I don't mind Stanton at all as a one-off. That's kind of where I'm at. I understand the ready, I'm ready deal, but I don't care. I've seen Stanton bang out too many homers. I know he's one of those guys that he can look terrible from one at bat to the next, but all of a sudden he's banging 2 out. It's like, oh well, I don't have that guy, so I'm not cashing this evening.
Yeah, man, this is an interesting game. Cody Ishii, he's cheap enough where I would have some interest there, and Ozuna on fantasy draft 6,600. If he's in the lineup, like you said, it'd be interesting to see what kind of lineup we got. I know it's righty. I just talked about how good Eichhoff is against righties, but Ozuna, another guy that has that pop that at that price tag, I'd take a shot on him.
Yeah, I don't mind it. How much is Ashy?
72.
Okay, yeah. So that basically translates to around like 3.6 or so, give or take on DK. I didn't look at DraftKings just yet.
Yeah.
And on FanDuel, he's at 3.2. Look, these are your kind of guys. I mean, I play Cody Ashy when he's like 2.5 and batting, second or third or fourth or something like that. I can't play him at 3.2 when he's batting sixth. I'm not saying you're wrong. I understand why you do it, but it's probably not something I would do.
All right, let's move on. Minnesota at Boston. Stephen Wright, Tyler Duffy. Stephen Wright, the chalk?
Not at that price. Not at that 9.5K. I mean, come on.
He's the chalk. Come on.
No, he's not. No,
yes, he is.
He is not the chalk. I disagree. I think there's somebody else that's the chalk. We're going to talk about it. I think in the next game actually, but no, at 9.5K, Stephen Wright. To me, I don't think he's a definitive chalk because, well, if you're going to spend up that much, I think you're going to play somebody else because the matchup is better, the ballpark is better, the opponent is worse. Wright is just so unpredictable from start to start. That knuckleball, you never really know what it's going to do. He has that silly home run to fly ball rate that has to correct itself at some point, doesn't it? I think maybe.
No.
Well, tell me why. Why is it not going to?
Have you seen his knuckleball?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched.
It's a Tim Wakefield-like knuckleball. This guy's legit. As long as it's not extremely hot, which it's not going to be extremely hot in Boston tomorrow, I feel like he's in play. And call me crazy, but I like him more than Wainwright. I know that's who you're talking about.
I think, well, it's Wainwright or there's somebody else we'll talk about as far as the chalk. If you're going to step down and you want to get an extra bat or two in Coors. But, I mean, again, the options are bad. None of these guys are people we want to actually play. I may or may not have – I think I've rostered Wright this year maybe once, possibly twice, and just kind of like as an off-the-board GPP play. I haven't bought it all season long. I'm still not buying it. I know Minnesota, it can be super fickle. Obviously, the ballpark is interesting, with the monster out there in left field. Sano has been cold. That whole series with Detroit and Minnesota really had me tilted. I don't know if you were in on that or not in on that. Oh, what? Yeah, we'll talk about Detroit soon enough, but I don't know what's going on with that team. And we expected so many more runs. The over-under in those games were like 9.5, 10.5, 10, and we basically got nothing. I mean, there's Kenny Vargas. If you're looking for a one-off, sure, has plenty of power there. You can't even guarantee he'll be in the lineup, but I think he's interesting. As far as numbers versus knuckleballs, I just kind of look at the old – I don't mean to steal your deal, but I look at the old BVP. I'm always curious, how a team does against a knuckleball pitcher. And there was really nothing. It was just a small sample size, so I really couldn't dig anything into it. But I think in the limited sample size, I'm pretty sure that Wright was pretty solid. It's just Steven, how do you pay this price for him? That's like he's probably going to get the win, though. He's probably going to get the win, so there's the 12 points on layaway and FanDuel.
And you got to think, he's won 8 of the last 10. And you have a Red Sox offense that might be one of the hottest offenses in baseball. They just absolutely destroyed the Giants. 11 runs. But, it was Matt Cain. But is Tyler Duffy much better?
He's better. He's better by default. It's worth noting also for Steven Wright can basically he can go 9 because there's no stress on that knuckleball. And the bullpen can use a little bit of rest because we know Uehara hit the DL. And we know they pitched, I think, at least 6 innings or at least 5+ because – Pomeranz just combusted in the 4th inning last night.
What was that?
Yeah, I don't know. Derek Hardy's got to speak to that. That's his boy. But, that kind of is what happens when you pitch in the National League on the West Coast and all of a sudden now you're in the AL East. Welcome to the AL East there, Pomeranz.
Do you think it was that, or do you think it was a 35-minute inning the Red Sox had?
I mean, it's a small sample is kind of my first answer, but that probably doesn't help, though. You're right. Like, just kind of chilling in the dugout for 35 minutes or so probably doesn't help. Here's my question, by the way. We have a 7-game slate. I like my random questions. I was watching the Boston game tonight. Hanley banged out 2 homers. Spoiler alert. You guys probably already know that. He banged out 2 homers, and then next time he was up, I can't remember who the pitcher was, but he was just like – taking his sweet time. It's like he was like, there's a man on first, man on second, whatever it was.
He hit him on purpose.
Yeah. Well, so he's like taking 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 2 minutes, 4 minutes between pitches. Then he finally says, "Screw it, let me just hit this dude." Because he's already banged 2 out, and he's kind of crowding the plate. And there was kind of a stare down of some sort. Now, let me ask you this: How does Steven Wright get revenge? Does he like beam somebody with a knuckleball? Like, what's his fastball these days?
Different team though. The Giants are out of Boston and it's Minnesota.
You're right. So much for that setup. I had a whole big setup, and there was no payoff.
I think that honestly, I think that the Red Sox are like, all right, well, Hanley probably deserved that one. Move on. He came out and hit a home run in his next at bat, and like he held the bat all the way down the first baseline. He should have got hit again his next at bat.
Hanley was pumped, man. He was excited about catching he was just – I don't know if you watched that game, but that was like a playoff atmosphere. The crowd was way into it. I think there's a lot of Giants fans there as well.
ESPN game, man. ESPN game.
Oh, was it? I didn't know that.
Wednesday night baseball. All right, let's talk bats in this game. Well, we spent all this time talking Hanley Ramirez. He's 2,900 on FanDuel on this slate. Tyler Duffy struggles with reverse splits from the small sample size that we have. 356 WOBA, 32% hard contact rate. Is this a spot that we can go back to the well on Hanley?
Well, I mean, it's the chalk. It's the old recency bias. I mean, he was a good play no matter what he did on Wednesday night, obviously. 2.9 Ks is way too cheap for somebody of the skill set of Hanley. Certainly you prefer him historically against the lefty, but like you said, Duffy's not somebody you're running away from. And just being in the middle of that offense who, is projected for one of the higher team totals of the night. Now, I mean, does that mean all of a sudden you pivot now to Ortiz at 4-5? You just spend up because Ortiz, he's been pretty good against righties this year, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. I did, when I was writing my article yesterday, 30 doubles and I think 20 of his 23 home runs against right-handed pitching this year.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
The guy's 40 years old. He's going to be 41 years old here within the next 3 or 4 months. And he has 23 home runs. Like, come on, is that even like legit? But all right,
he's a man. Well, that's a it's a long answer if it's David Ortiz because there's been some allegations. I know you're a Boston fan, but just they're out there. Hit the internet up.
He's been doing it for 15 years though. I think he's been in the bigs for 19 years, and he's been hitting the way that he's been hitting for at least 12. So.
And Minnesota cut him like 10 years ago. They didn't get anything for him. They said go away. We don't want you playing baseball anymore.
Yeah, revenge narratives. All right.
Nobody in baseball is more vengeful. This is a fact proven Wednesday night. Jed Jerko, the jerk store. He is a vengeful man.
They gave him the 2 spot and said, "Hey, go out and show your team what you know." They kind of expected that. He was a top prospect.
Oh, that's the next game too, by the way. Yeah, he was for sure, and he banged out 3 homers yesterday in the doubleheader, and he's got one more game against San Diego, so that'll be good times. Okay, so as far as Boston, we like everybody, right? Is that just? I mean, we like all the usual suspects. We like Betts. Yeah. We're fine with Jackie Brown. Look. This is probably what you're doing. I'm not doing this. I've not played Sandy Leon once, and he's batting like 500, which is silly, and he hit another homer last night, which tilts me. And I'm sure you had him someplace.
I did not. Did not. There was like 4 or 5 catchers on the night slate that were just all in good spots. Like, I know he had a home run and he had a good game, but I like guys a little bit better. And, again, he put up 30 fantasy points again. He's 2,700. It'd be interesting to see if he's in the lineup. He's a boom or bust catcher, but not a guy that I really like, to be honest with you.
I want to dig in what his BABIP is because it's got to be absolutely silly.
Yeah, but he keeps hitting home runs. Like, BABIP or not,
that doesn't factor in, right? BABIP doesn't factor in home runs.
If you're hitting home runs, who cares, right?
I suppose, but I just feel like I'm going to say that the regression monster is going to hit Sandy Leon.
San Diego at St. Louis. I feel like you're dying to talk about Adam Wainwright, Andrew Cashner on the other side of the hill here. Cashner stinks, so Wainwright should have run support here.
First of all, yeah, I heard a rumor that apparently Texas is curious. They're considering trying to trade for Cashner, which I don't know how San Diego is finding suitors. First, James Shields, who we'll hear from later on in the podcast, but now apparently Cashner is wanted at, I believe it was Texas, and they might want to trade for him before the start even happens. So just be on alert for that.
So we could get a bullpen game, even better than Cashner.
It's possible, I suppose. Maybe they'll call somebody up. Maybe they have somebody on standby, or maybe it's just sort of a rumor that that's not going to be proven true. But yeah, Cashner's a funky dude. You want St. Louis against righties this year has been a thing. One of the best offenses in all of baseball against right-handers. Cashner historically bad versus lefties. This year worse versus righties. Just in general, though, not very good. So, yeah, sure, I'm on board with the Cardinals. Piscotty, even Holiday, sure, why not? Grichuk, his price is steadily rising, but he's still too cheap at 3-1. And again, the jerk store called, and they said that Jed Jerko is just way too underpriced. I think he's, 2.5 these days still? Yeah, 2.5 on FanDuel. Come on, man, that is just too cheap. That is the chalk, like right there. If you're not playing Trevor Story or something like that, you're playing the jerk store, right?
Yeah, he's expensive on draft. 8,100, just too expensive over there. No interest for me there. Every day I give out 3 guys on fantasy draft that I like under 8K, and the first one actually comes from the Cardinals. It's Matt Adams. I know he's been hot or cold, and I just think he's too cheap in this matchup. We love taking lefties against Cashner. 6,800 for Adams over on fantasy draft. He's going to be the first guy that I'm going to be targeting here quite a bit.
He played 18 innings yesterday. Like Matt Adams, big city. I don't think he got pinch hit in either game. That's impressive. That's no defensive replacement. I don't think so. I'm taking a peek now at the box score, and I think he played 18 innings, and as far as I know, he survived. So good for him. Yeah, sure. I suppose he's worth a look. 3-4 there on FanDuel. Plenty of pop, of course, in Matt Adams' bat. You're basically paying for the home run upside. If you want to be cute, if you want to be different, Aledmus Diaz in the same team is 3.8. Jerk Store is 2.5. Jerk Store is going to have 3, 4, 5x the ownership of Diaz. Even though Diaz should probably bat second, I assume Jerk Store is going to go back down to like the 6 or 7 hole because, I assume that's going to happen. Who knows what Matheny's going to do? Silly me, I'm trying to predict Mike Matheny's lineups because that's Mike Matheny, St. Louis, and Arizona. Those are the 2 trickiest ones in all baseball, right?
Yes, for sure. All right, let's talk Wainwright here. So I'll give out the bad, and you can give out the good. Career high Sierra, career high hard contact rate. I think it's a career high walk rate too. I think it's really flirting with it. I don't know if it's a career high, but it's flirting with it. So tell me why I should play Wainwright here.
Well, okay, so I like you're just assuming I'm a Wayne. I'm not a Wainwright truther. He's somebody that I did not really roster at the beginning of the year. Of course, he's somebody I played throughout the years, but he's kind of sort of reinventing himself in the middle of the season. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but he's been good for 3 straight starts now. I believe he CGSO'd the Marlins his last time out. And against Pittsburgh, against Milwaukee, 3 solid starts in a row. The walks have been subdued, just 5 in those 3 starts, 9, 7, 7 as far as innings pitched. And even the Ks have been up. And, by the way, he has the Padres, the Fathers, the Friars. They're absolutely putrid. They're so good against lefties. They, as of right now, or as of like yesterday, whatever it may be, they had the best WRC plus in all of baseball versus lefties. But versus righties, they are pretty awful. That said, that's for the season, and it's worth noting that at least the Padres have improved as the season's gone on. They've added guys like Dickerson and Schrimpf and some characters, Solarte, to be somewhat respectable. But they're still one of the worst teams in all baseball when facing right-handers. And hey, you got to roster a pitcher. The problem is, here's my issue, Stevie. Wainwright, he's 20K on draft. He's 9.2 on FanDuel. He's like one of the most expensive pitchers out there, depending on your site. I want to pay. This is kind of, sort of, somewhat damaged goods, right? You ever go to Best Buy and buy the TV that has a scratch in it for 40% off? Why are we not getting that on Wainwright?
Because look at the game logs. That's why you're not getting the cheap price tag. Just open up and look at the game logs, and that's why you're not getting the cheap price tag. 30 plus fantasy points in 8 of his last 9 starts on FanDuel. That's why you're paying up for him here, and he's going to be so chalky. If you're playing cash games on this slate, he's the guy. If you're playing tournaments, very little exposure for me.
So I'm throwing in a lineup on FanDuel, just kind of curious how that works out. And then you have 3.2K to spend per hitter. Then again, there's a Coors game. We'll talk about that in a second. You certainly want some coverage to that. Jerk Store, Hanley, those are both under your budget. And then right there now you're at 3.5 or so. And then you can get Wainwright, you can get Jerk Store, you can get Hanley, and then you can get 3 bats in that Coors game, and then you're on your way basically. But I don't know how chalky he's going to be. I think that Wainwright will be, if not the top owned guy, maybe the second owned guy. I think there's another guy that people are going to kind of sort of like to some degree that nobody likes. The entire DFS community, we all got together, we had a meeting and said, yes, we hate this guy. But I think we're going to go to that well today. You know what I'm talking about?
If I had to guess, it'd be Matt Moore.
It's not Matt Moore, but it's the same game.
Oh, no. No. All right, let's move on here. Detroit at Chicago. James Shields, Mike Pelfrey. Is Shields in play just because of how bad Detroit is right now?
No, I mean I'm not buying that Detroit's still a bad team. They're missing JD Martinez, I guess, to some extent. Sure.
Cold.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you okay, so the hot streaks are a thing if you kind of look back and say, well, they were hot up to this point and cold at this point. But in the middle of it, how do you isolate and say, well, this is where they're going to turn it around? You can't do that.
Right? In July, they're 26th in Team WRC plus.
Okay.
In the whole month of July.
All right, so break down the individual matchups. James Shields versus Miguel Cabrera. Do you feel good about rostering Shields with Cabrera at the plate?
No, and outside of Cabrera and Kinsler, who else do you really worry about? Are you worried about Tyler Collins? Victor Martinez has little to no upside. Castellanos is super cold as well. This team is just so ice cold.
Nice ballpark bump to go to Chicago. Is the weather? Is it expected to be hot there? I assume so.
Oh, that was the other thing about Wainwright. It's supposed to be 105 at first pitch in Busch Stadium.
That sounds hot.
It's going to be super hot throughout the whole game. It stays through the hundreds.
Do not choose milk. That would be a bad choice.
But this is another game. It's going to be extremely hot. 98 degrees at first pitch, wind blowing out to left center field. It's one of the best as far as weather goes. It's one of the best games on the slate outside of Busch Stadium and Coors Field.
Yeah, I mean, and Shields, well, look, I mean, as mandated by Major League Baseball, if you give up a home run to Bart Cologne, you're forced to trade your pitcher just immediately, and that's what happened. And he was in Chicago and got absolutely pummeled, in the beginning, getting traded from the National League to the American League, and, just kind of sort of makes sense, the ballpark downgrade he had as well. But he's kind of sort of righted himself to some degree, but I'm not buying it because he's still not striking anybody out. If you look at the game log of late, well, he faced Anaheim 8 innings, 2 Ks, Atlanta 7 innings, 2 Ks. Of course, those are 2 teams that don't strike out a ton versus the respective arm. The Yankees only got 3 strikeouts there. Are you believing there's a resurgence out of James Shields? He's been competent his last 4 times out. We'll give him that. but I'm not totally buying it.
See, no, I'm not buying it as well, but when we looked into his stats, we didn't really see why this all of a sudden just happened, and that's always concerning. Like, I want a reason why he's getting shelled, and so on this type of slate, you got to take shots somewhere, and I feel like Shields might be a guy just because of how Tigers' offense is so cold. But if you're going to roster Shields in a lineup, do yourself a favor and stack the Tigers in a lineup as well. That's just, hedging yourself in tournaments on this slate might be a good way to go here.
We're staring at a 10 over-under, by the way, in that game. And a lot of that probably has to do with the fact on the other side is good old Cy Mike Pelfrey. And
Mike Pelfrey.
He's dreadful. Man. I watched him the last time out. Not that you need to watch him the last time out, but he was just like afraid to throw pitches because anything he was throwing was getting pummeled. And then he just like, all right, screw it, I'll just walk everybody. And he barely lasted 2 innings. I don't think he went 2 innings. Gave up 4 hits, gave up 4 walks, and he was just gone. And we know behind him is a pretty weak bullpen there for Detroit. So I guess maybe you might get a W out of Shields. And you talk about guys that are cold. Both these first basemen, they're both 3-6 on FanDuel. We got Miggy, we have Jose Abreu. And when was the last time either one of these guys had a big night?
It's been a while. I know Jose Abreu. It's been a good minute. All right. So you're building your teams, and you're kind of thinking if you're playing Wainwright, you got about $3,200, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Is Adam Eaton a guy you look at just because of his really fair price tag?
He's probably one of those guys I only play if I'm stacking the White Sox. He's okay. My one-offs, I like guys that can kind of do it on his own, and I suppose he can run into one, but he doesn't necessarily excel with power. He can get 3 hits, sure. He's the kind of guy to hit one in the gap. He can even swipe a bag on occasion. But I like guys that they don't necessarily, they can say F you, Joe Boo. I'm going to do it on my own. That's it. I don't need my teammates. I don't need the guys in front of me, the guys behind me. I'm going to bang one out, and that's it. And I don't necessarily see he can do it, but I think there's much better options as far as one-offs. But, again, it's Mike Pelfrey, and if things go poorly for him, which is certainly possible, even though they're the home team, Eaton's probably going to lead off and maybe get 5 ABs, which is certainly appealing. Less likely at home, of course, especially if you're ahead. You only go 8 innings. But, if you're stacking up the White Sox, I think he makes that stack.
Second fantasy draft play under 8K comes from this game, and it comes from the White Sox. I hate Mike Pelfrey. I think he's just a bad pitcher. Yeah. Melky Cabrera, 7,200 over on draft. He's hitting the ball really well, multi-hits in 3 of his last 5. This is a guy that starting to swing the bat hot and gets a matchup with Pelfrey. Really nice weather game, and extremely cheap on FanDuel as well.
Yeah, I'm staring at a 2.6 is pretty fair. Melky's a guy, I just don't roster very often. But this is one of those spots where he's probably going to hit somewhere near the top of the order. He's not going to be buried. And he's 2.6, and he's facing Pelfrey in that bad bullpen behind him. So, sure, I have no issue with it.
They moved him up ahead of Frazier, didn't they?
Well, I think he had a cleanup not too long ago. If it was the other day or if it was, I can't recall. I get my days confused.
I'm super curious because I think I remember seeing him bat in front of Pelfrey, or not Pelfrey, Frazier here.
Frazier's certainly in play as well, obviously, with the his home run upside.
Yeah, Frazier's like the definition of boomer bust.
Pretty much.
Talk about it way too much. Anytime you want to get exposure to Frazier, you're not going to see me complain. Any other bats from this game overall? We didn't really talk about the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, V-Mark's fine. I think his price is pretty fair at 3.5. You might, some guys just like the punt catcher and just kind of move on, which is certainly possible. If Dioner Navarro, if he draws a start, he's got some power, he can run in the 1, I suppose, if he draws a start there for the White Sox. Maven's been hitting 2 of late, but he's just not terribly interesting. J-Up is still too cheap at 2.7 on FanDuel. Again, he's kind of a boom buster as well. Swings and misses a ton, but he's got plenty of power. We know this. So I don't mind him for tournaments. It seems like an interesting game to stack. It's a good pivot game because people are going to look at Coors first and they're going to look at Boston second. And, I know ownership percentage. I've always say this all the time. I think people talk about ownership percentage too much. It's certainly worth considering. But, if a guy's 8% or 15%, either he does good or he doesn't. I understand there's a game theory to it, but I don't think it's going to be incredibly high. Just if you like the guys in this game, don't worry about ownership percentage, basically.
Now, just real quick, Tuesday, Melky hit cleanup, and on Wednesday, he hit in the 2 spot, and Justin Morneau batted cleanup for the White
That's
Sox.
right.
Just throwing that out there.
Justin Morneau sighting. Man, that guy he had such a nice career path until concussions got him.
Yeah, but why did he come back?
I guess he probably likes I guess he enjoys the game. He really likes baseball, or he really hates his family.
Or he likes money. I'm sure they're paying him.
Well, he's probably making like league minimum, though. I'm guessing he doesn't make a ton of money.
League minimum's like $500,000, Dean.
That's like $275 for a veteran or something like that. But he's he had a massive contract in Minnesota, did he not? I feel like he did.
Minnesota, and I think the Rockies paid him too.
Oh boy, yeah. So good for him. Yeah, but I can't imagine he's making. I think it's he actually enjoys it. That's what I'm going with.
Well, speaking of the Rockies paying people, Atlanta at Colorado, Chad Bettis is still getting paid by the Rockies, and Mike Fultonevich pitching here for the Braves. I actually like Fulty. I play him from, occasionally. This is not the spot I'm going to play him. I think I've actually played him the last, 2, maybe 3 times. Paid off 1 or twice, but yeah, not the spot.
Yeah, you definitely want to attack them with lefties. And do the Rockies they have a couple. They got Blackmon. They got Cargo right at the top of the lineup, basically. 4-3 and 4-2. The price just not high enough. I think it's, on FanDuel at least. I don't know what it is on Draft, to be honest. You can go ahead and take a peek. But I think the price, it's just too easy to make that work as far as Blackmon and Cargo. It's a really, really bad spot for Fultonevich. And as far as the over-under in this game, I think I saw it was 12. Which is particularly alarming. It's the Atlanta Braves, an absolutely putrid offense, is in a game that has a 12 over/under as of right now, which is that's pretty insane. And okay, Colorado is a -165 favorite, so we're looking at just kind of some bad math in my head. That's probably like a 7-team total for Colorado.
See, the thing is though, like the weather is so good in Coors on this day. Like it's going to be hot. The ball's already going to be flying. We've seen it. On Wednesday, it was really hot there. It's a good spot. Good spot as well. And you mentioned Blackmon and Cargo. Obviously, 2 of the top plays on the slate. You're going to have to pay for them on Draft and DraftKings. So if you had to pick one, which one would you pick?
Well, if you're going to do the old game theory, it's always Blackmon, right? Because people just Cargo's got the bigger name recognition. He always tends to have the greater ownership. Now, I think Cargo's upside's a little bit higher. But and also Blackmon's about $100 more too. If somebody needs that extra $100, or they say, "Well, I'll take the one that's cheaper." The one that's cheaper is actually the one that's better too, at least better with air quotes. I think Blackmon's going to be. They're probably going to be packaged together a lot, but as a one-off, Cargo has a little bit more upside. But for tournaments, I think Blackmon's a little bit more savvy.
All right.
How about yourself?
I'm always Cargo. I take ownerships away and I just play the upside. Cargo has the 2-run home run upside. But with that being said, Blackmon has so much ability to steal bases here because the Braves can't throw anybody out.
AJ Pierzynski,
Flowers, whoever's catching, they just can't throw anybody out.
Well, I mean, Flowers would be particularly awful if he was back there catching because he's dealing with a hand injury and he's on the DL. So
no,
he's definitely not going to throw anybody out.
That's what I'm saying. Like, even the replacement Wrecker, he gave up like 2 or 3 stolen bases the other night. Yeah,
well, to be fair, that was against Billy Hamilton, but yeah, that's
Blackmon's
true.
Not slow.
No, I didn't say Blackmon's slow. When did I say that?
I'm just saying, like in general, yeah. Blackmon's not slow. If AJ Pierzynski's in the lineup, he's 3,100 on FanDuel. Do you play him?
Oh, man, I suppose he's kind of sort of interesting just because of the price. He's not the first Brave I'm looking at. It's funny. I was going to ask you the same question about Nick Markakis because, I mean, he might have doubles power in Coors, right?
I have a lot of interest in Markakis. He was a guy that I written down. Not as much in Ciarte, but I have interest in Markakis, and obviously we have to have interest in Freeman here.
He's too cheap. Freeman at 3.9 is just 3.9 in FanDuel. I think that's too cheap. That's why you can get guys like Miguel and Abreu that are both in good spots. I know they've been terrible. I know they've been cold. They're going to break out at some point. I prefer to look at the large sample of their careers being very, very good at hitting baseballs as opposed to the last 2 weeks or whatever it may be. But that said, Freeman in Colorado at 3.9K, on the road team guaranteed 9 at bats, ups your chances. Things that they go pretty well. But I like his shot of getting 5 ABs there. The pen is not good. Bettis is not somebody you're running away from. That's probably your chalk first baseman. He's probably more popular than Ortiz, actually. I don't know about Hanley. Maybe Hanley too.
Yeah. Real quick, Markakis is definitely the last guy that I had for the fantasy draft. Plays under 8K. That's why I said I had him written down. So yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. Glad we talked about him. He's the third guy that I have here on fantasy draft that I just feel like is too cheap. On FanDuel, Adonis Garcia at 3,200. I know it's a righty-righty matchup, but got to have some interest, right?
Yeah, it all comes down to what Atlanta's going to do with their lineup. We've seen Garcia bat second sometimes. You've seen Beckham lead off. Malik Smith will be fun in this game. It's unfortunate he's hurt. I would like to see him leading off here, but that's not happening. He's chilling somewhere with Tyler Flowers. But, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with Adonis Garcia. Somehow I overlooked Adonis Garcia, and I said Franco was kind of sort of my guy at third base, but Garcia probably makes more sense. Both those guys have great upside, but, of course, the game in Coors should break the tie.
Yeah, you being the Mr. Chalk cash game guy, I thought Garcia would be high up on your list because he's 3,200 at Coors Field, and Chad Bettis, a lot of hard contact, really high WOBA, struggles with these right-handed bats. Yeah,
and then there's Story. We talk about Story. He's 4K. That's probably – and there's Arenado as well, who's 4.9. It's interesting because I think that people might just not play Arenado because of the price. I mean, there's going to be some shares, of course, out there. We're just going to try to figure out – if I can only get 4 shares of Coors, I don't know if he makes the cut if you're only getting 4 shares. I mean, certainly there's ways to kind of sort of somewhat fully stack the game in Coors. I just don't know if he makes the cut when it comes to that. But, we know his upside's pretty immense. We prefer him against lefties, but we're not necessarily running away from Fultenovich either. So basically, look, it's Coors Field. All these guys are in play. Grab your shares. Inciarte, he's batting like 7th these days. There's Jeff Francoeur, Frenchie. I prefer him versus a lefty. I prefer him 7 years ago. I actually played him a couple days ago in Cincinnati, and I hang my head in shame. And that did not work out. But against a lefty, we started off the game against Reed. And he was super cheap. But it depends on how the lineup comes out. But I'm interested in pretty much anybody, and maybe even Nick Markakis. I gotta say, Stevie, I have a season-long team in baseball that I play with my friends, and they probably aren't. They don't know what's going on or don't even know look at the schedule, whatever. I picked up Nick Markakis for the week, and they're probably like, Nick Markakis got picked up? Yeah, because I saw they played against Cincinnati in 4 games in Coors. So I'm like, all right, hold my nose and click on Nick Markakis, and here we go.
All right, let's move on over to the last game of the night, Tampa at Oakland. Sonny Gray, Matt Moore. Huge ballpark.
Yeah.
But man, Sonny Gray just sucks. Let's just throw that out there. Sonny Gray is bad.
No, he doesn't suck. He's not as good as his name suggests. No, that's the misconception. He's not as good as the name brand suggests. That's all. It's like Yasiel Puig. Puig doesn't suck, but the name brand suggests he's better than he actually is.
Sonny Gray has a 5 ERA this year, 32% hard contact rate, giving up home runs. His whip is a 1.48. Tell me why he doesn't suck.
Well, I mean, look, you know what you're going to get with Sonny Gray. You're probably going to get 6 innings.
6 innings, 6 to 8 hits, 2 to 4 strikeouts.
No, he's going to get more. He's going to get more than 4 strikeouts against Tampa. I'm taking the over on that.
He got 4 strikeouts against Tampa in May. 5 2/3.
Well, that's a small sample size. 5 2/3. If he went 6, I don't know why he would have struck out 5. Tampa strikes out pretty much more than anybody else in the league against. I have not seen the updated numbers, to be honest, as far as in the Fangraphs, but they're always like top 3, top 4 as far as striking out versus righties. I know they have as a team, I don't know how they do, but with one of the most home runs in the season as well. Pierce is back as well, but Pierce obviously is more deadly against a lefty. Look, it's not that I like Sonny Gray. It's not an endorsement. It's just that Sonny Gray can open things up for you as far as getting as many bats, not as many bats, but a fair amount of bats as you want. And I don't think he loses it for you. I don't think he gets absolutely smashed. There's my rousing endorsement. Because at the same price point, find me somebody better at 7-7.
All right. At 7-7,
Liriano?
I would take Shields over. I would take Sonny Gray. I would take the struggling Detroit offense instead of the strikeout happy Tampa Bay.
We're going to make a wager on this, Stevie. That's going to happen. I'm going to hold you to it.
No problem. We'll figure something out. No problem.
I can't believe I'm going to wager on Sonny Gray. That's going to happen.
I would, if you give me point per dollar, I would probably take Kohler before I would take Sonny Gray.
Oh, man. I'm just going to clean up. Can I take him against all those guys? Do you want Liriano too?
No, I don't ever like Laureano. No, and I really don't have a lot of interest in Matt Moore here, but I have a little interest in a guy. And you mentioned Franco being your chalk third baseman, and it made me like lose my mind, Dean, because we have Valencia at 2,800 here against Matt Moore.
And this is kind of the reason why I think Arenado is going to be low owned, in relation to the slate, 7-game slate with Coors, because there's a lot of good options at third. Valencia is a great option. 2.8 on FanDuel is just way too cheap with this history of smashing lefties. I know the ballpark stinks, but he plays there half the time. He bangs them out there. He doesn't care. I think Franco is fine, and we talked about Donis as well. And it just kind of speaks to, hey, I think that Arenado is going to be really, really low owned, lower owned than you think. How about that? I mean, he's not going to be like 5%, but he's not going to be like 18, 20% in tournaments, as far as I can tell. On the other side, too, Longo. Nobody's going to have Longo, and he's been super hot. Of course, he's had some positive matchups as well. I agree. I think Valencia is a great play. They talked about limiting his at-bats going forward, or possibly giving him a couple more days off because they want to see some younger guys. Maybe they'll just trade him, which they should. But assuming he's in the lineup, yeah, perfectly fine with him at 2.8K. You mentioned the name Moore. You thought maybe I was on Moore to some degree. Are you on Moore at all, or no? Doesn't sound like you are.
No, just because when we're looking at it, Healy's up. He's a good batter, right-handed bat. We're looking at Jed Lowry, who's not terrible. Valencia is really good from the right-handed side. Semien, want to talk about a hot hitter that's been running a lot lately. Semien's good on the right-hand side. We always have the Mini Crush, who's actually one of my faves, and Smolinski. So, they have right-handed bats.
Yeah, he's too cheap, by the way, Davis as well, and he's probably a guy that's going to go ignored. We always talk about this as far as, West Coast guys are just under-owned because they don't have that check mark next to their name until about a half hour until lineup block, and people are just afraid. They have lives. They have dinner. They have girlfriends. They have wives. They have to appease and kids and to play with and all that, and they have some Pokemon Go that needs to be attended to. So, they just want to lock in their lineup and go, and they don't want to, take a chance that so-and-so is not going to be in there. But Davis is pretty solid as far, we know the upside in him. He's another guy that the ballpark doesn't really matter. When he gets a hold of it, it's just gone. Semien, the thing with him, priced up a little bit, and you never really know where he's going to land in the lineup. He can fall like 2, 7. Oakland's another team. You kind of sort of never really know. You kind of know the pieces that will be in there, but not what order.
Yeah, Semien was batting second a lot, but Lowry came back, and even against the lefty the other day, Semien was back down towards the bottom. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how the lineup plays out. Don't hate a little mini 3 or 4 man Oakland stack, maybe with a Colorado stack, and still being able to get in a good pitcher because they're so cheap. So it might be a way.
Is that good? Air quotes, good relative to the slate.
It might be good enough for this slate. You're right.
Yeah.
But with this slate brings some home runs, and we got to play some home run derby here. I didn't have anybody to play against yesterday, and I'm kind of disappointed because I nailed 2 out of 3, and I needed to catch up a little bit. So I'm going to have to take out my frustrations on you, Dean.
Oh, you meatloafed it. That's pretty good. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. All right. So am I
take Coors Field?
Oh, okay. That's fair. That's legit. I understand.
That's just the rule.
Let's see. Who am I going to go with? Am I batting first here?
Yeah, I'm letting you bat lead off.
I appreciate that. Let's see. Well, I'm going to save that one. All right. Since I'm going to go with Maikel Franco. I said him yesterday. It didn't work out. I'm doubling down. It's the old what is that theory when you just keep doubling it down, and eventually it works? You play it on blackjack, and if you do it 9 times, you go broke and you're homeless. It starts with an M, but for some reason I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, I can't think of it either. If you didn't say anything, I would have definitely been there. But, all right, you're going Franco. I'm going Matt Adams.
Big city. I like it.
Doubles in 3 straight games, starting to hit the ball, squaring it up. Really hot in St. Louis. I like it.
I mean, I'm going to keep going with revenge. Jerk store. I'm going to go with that cheapy dome.
He's not going to dong again.
Do you not believe in vengeance?
I do. I'm me and you. We're team narrative.
A hateful person.
I want to go a little crazy with this next pick and go with Valencia.
That's not too crazy. That's not off the reservation completely.
All right. I'll have to, if you're saying that's not crazy enough, I got to step up my game with the last pick.
You know what? I picked my players out of order, and like I feel like now I'm not going to be bold because I haven't really said anybody chalky yet. Not too chalky, at least.
All right. Well, give me your chalk.
I mean, look, I want to defend the rights of the guests, and they would want me to say Ortiz, but that's too easy. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do and just flip out. Miggy breaks out. Miggy bangs one alpha James Shields. There you go.
And if I'm not mistaken, I got to pull it up now because I think Miggy has really good BVP against Shields.
I think it's 9 for 20. It's off the dome.
9 for 20 with 2 home runs.
There you go.
All right. I want to go a little different here. I'll stay in your game with the Detroit. I'm going to go against Pelfrey, and I'm going to go Melky Cabrera donging one out against Mike Pelfrey.
Milkman, nicely done.
I think I'm going to stick to my core here. I like these guys that I was talking about during the podcast. The fun thing about this slate is I don't have to rule off anybody when we go to this next segment. If you had to pick one pitcher, doesn't have to score the most fantasy points, but he's going to pick up a win. I'm not ruling anybody off. Who do you got?
Well, I mean, Wainwright's going to win. That's too easy though. Wainwright's going to win. That's happening. Just so you know. But I'm gonna say the name that nobody wants to say. I'm gonna say Sonny Gray grabs a win.
Dean is definitely banned for the next few weeks. All right, I'm going Stephen Wright. I think it's pretty obvious that
that one's obvious too. Yeah,
I'm on the Stephen Wright train here. I'm gonna ride it, and either ride it to like 40 fantasy points or ride it to like 17. But I'm gonna ride it, and hopefully he pays off for me here.
The Quad City DJs would be proud.
Dean, any final thoughts before we get out of here, my friend?
I think we're good. I think I made enough random references that the people are going to be like, all right, enough already. Never have this nonsense back again. Please relegate me to 7-game slates. Thank you.
Anytime I get 7-game slates, just message you. Is that what you're saying?
There you go.
All right. You want to talk about any opportunities that you have opening for any coaching?
Oh, yeah. That's been fun. That's been good times. I've been teaching. I've been coaching in the Skype. Pretty much, I've been playing DFS since 2012. Basically, based my bankroll off of cash games this year. I pivoted more so to the GPPs just because I think cash games have somewhat dried up to some extent. There is some edges that certainly are to be had, but my game is expanding, Stevie. I know I'm still the chalk guy per se, but I've had some success with GPPs and going over lineups, lineup building, just general DFS strategies. All that, check the forums or even direct message me on the Twitter machine or just hit me up on Twitter, direct message me on RotoGrinders, and I'd be more than happy to coach you guys. It's good times.
All right. If you guys want to talk movies or some coaching, Dean is definitely your guy. If you like playing fantasy and you like this podcast every day, head on over to fantasydraft.com. They sponsor the podcast Monday through Friday, so jump over there. Use promo code Grinders. Jump in that $4,000 home run here on Thursday night. And it's only a 5-entry max, so you're not playing against people having 20, 30 entries. They only can max out with 5, so pretty level playing field. That's their goal over there on Fantasy Draft. So if you feel like you're playing up against a lot of entries, head on over to Draft and check them out. It's going to wrap it up here for this slate. Congratulations. I have to say it, man, because with doing the podcast by myself yesterday, I was really under the weather, and I said that if anybody knocked 3 out of 3 home runs tweeting me RGMG, I would give them, some props. And Stussy 2386, William Townsend on Twitter, he had Rizzo, Kipnis, and Santana. Not only did he have all 3, but he got the double dong for Rizzo. So congratulations to him. He won the RotoGrinders t-shirt.
Wow.
And, yeah. 4 home runs.
Impressive.
Yeah, it was everybody had a lot of people had the Rizzo Santana, but they had Chisenhall. Like there was a lot of 2 homers.
Yeah, the exacta was easy, but the trifecta, that was kind of tricky.
And he got it with 4. So congratulations to him. Good luck in your contest tonight, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Holler.